Okay, so completed the MPP solar all-in-one unit, and there's your controller. I've got the AC out going to this electrical box. It's got an actual circuit breakers. This one's the only one active. The other three are just there for show. They're not wired up or nothing, but they are on the bus. And in this situation, this is actually double throw, double pole. So I had to actually take the 120 and put it on the other side to actually energize this to work. So just in case you need to know that, it doesn't work. Positive and minus for the input for the panels. And I have ability to have more solar panels to it if I want to on another array. This right here is a GFI switch. This is a 20 ampere. That's all I need for the input on this. It says my generator is only 15 amps, 120 volts on the outputs for it. So basically that's all it's going to get anyway. So 20 is more than enough. It'll break it if something goes wrong with the inverter on the generator. And this is the output right here. It's 120 volt output, and right now it currently is power in the greenhouse. This right here is a 12 to 48 volt DC fusible switch. It's 100 amps, and this can break my circuit if I want to and shut everything off. And it's on the ground side, positive side there. This is the batteries. Follow it down. I have 4 100 amp hour light PO4 batteries, lithium iron phosphate, and there's 2 in series to make 24 volts because it's a 24 volt unit. So you connect the positive to the negative, and then there's your ground, and there's your hot wire or your voltage DC plus positive. And I have the same thing over here. This unit, these are in series to make 24 volts, and that's the output for that, positive, and this is the negative output. And you can see I have these at this point, these cables, I have them paralleled. So yeah, when you parallel stuff, positive to positive, negative to negative. Okay, let's go over the basic architecture for this assembly. It has a pure sine wave inverter, a built-in PWM or MPPT solar charge controller, and you really want an MPPT. They're more efficient than a PWM. You have a configurable input voltage range for home appliances and personal computers. You have a configurable battery charging current to suit different applications. Configurable priority of AC solar charger. Compatible to mains voltage or generator power. When they mean that, they mean the power coming out of your wall. Okay. Automatic reset, overload and overtemp and short circuit protection. Smart battery charger designed to optimize battery performance, and a cold start function. Now, here's our inverter unit, and our voltage AC out will go to power any home appliance. Relatively. You have a battery bank connection that will go to your batteries, and this is the voltage AC input that you can either from your wall power from your utility company or a generator will plug into, and then you have your solar panel power array, and that can be 30 to 80 volts DC. So you can take 4 100 watt 12 volt panels and put them in series, and since the raw voltage of a 12 volt DC solar panel is approximately anywhere from 17 to 20 volts, you're going to meet that 80 volt requirement. And another thing too, when you put them in solar panels in series, don't increase the current. First thing you want to do is unpack this thing and inspect it. There's a little plate you take off at the bottom here, which you will give you access to connecting the device to the various requirements for the system. And then there's a couple of screw holes that mount up here that you can mount it onto the wall with. And there's also a little wing brackets, little L brackets that attach here, and then you can put another screw there, and same thing with the other side. So now I have the unit attached. Screw down there, screw up there, screw on the corner. Now I'm going to take off this shelf, and then I'm going to explain how I'm going to wire this up. Where we're going. Okay, so I wired the 2 switches for the input for the solar panel array, and I can have 2 sets of panels in there. And that combines into the, I did find some 6-gauge wire, which I was happy to find off an older inverter that burned out from China. So that step part here for wiring up the input for the solar panels is complete. All I need to do is connect them, the MC4 connectors, to the array of panels. Okay, so this is, the right side is my negative terminal for my battery. And I'm going to go ahead and make sure that you unscrew this so that you can see that it's fully open. And then I'm just going to attach it. So you screw it down until you feel it get really tight on that wire. And be careful, because you can strip these out if you try to go too tight. If you can pull on it like that, don't pull too hard, because you pull it out. Then you know that right now that you have a good solid connection. The next step is to go ahead and install this right here. So we'll do that now. Okay, so I'm going to install this as close as I can to the line going down to my negative terminal connection point of the battery system. And I'm just using some sheetrock screws, and I'll straighten it out, make it look level. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you know, hey, if I'm doing this for a client or customer, yeah, everything would have a level on it. And there you go. Now all I gotta do is push this to break the circuit. So when I go to connect this to the battery system on the negative end, guess what? I've already got it isolated, and then I have to do this to connect it. So we'll just unscrew this. And attach it there. Okay, and then when I attach this here, I've just screwed the nut on. You might have to start it by hand. Try to leave yourself a little room on this bend. You don't want to be too close to it. I think I need to. There we go. And you don't have to crank it down and crack the plastic and everything else. It doesn't have to be that tight. You can see right here I'm stuck. That's because the socket's a little too wide. But that's nice and tight. I want to make sure, I'll just go ahead and do it again, and maybe I'll get a wrench on that. That's pretty tight. So there you go. Now I'm going to leave it into the off position where the circuit breaker's open, and when we get done putting the positive lead on, we'll go ahead and tie wrap this right here like we did this one. Okay, so I've chosen to use red to signify that this is a, so we want to do the positive. Come on, get in there. I'll do positive. Tighten that up. This happens to be a 14 millimeter. And I like to use anything I can to isolate myself from the battery system, but I couldn't find the right adapter, so at least I'll use a handle. Okay. These batteries just move around a lot because they're so light. Let me hold it and put some force into it. And for this, there we go. Okay, so I've connected the batteries in series now. So you can see I made a cable and I already attached it to the positive lead. Okay, so now we're going to connect the positive lead to this unit. Remember to open it up all the way so you can get it in there good. And I'm just going to tighten her up. Till it's snug, don't over tighten. Now I'm going to tell you one thing I've learned throughout the years, especially when I've worked in electrical engineering type of work jobs. Do never use a damn power tool to terminate into these lugs. You can easily strip them out. So there, now that's hooked up, and our next step will be to hook up the negative cable, and our battery installation will be complete. But before we do that, we're going to go ahead and put our tie wrap on to hold these in place. It just makes it look neater and it's a more professional type of job. Okay, so I've attached the battery cables, the breaker switch. Remember, you always do the positive side first, but when you're doing series, do your series first and then connect your positive lead to your battery. Then break it out into a breaker switch like this. And when I put this on, it didn't get any sparking because guess what? There still was no connection. So if I want to turn on, all I do now is I do that, and now I have a live battery situation. But I do not have this unit on. There's a power switch for it, and I'm not going to turn it on yet because I'm going to leave this disabled on the battery. But that completes installing the battery to the MPP solar 24 volt all-in-one inverter. So the next thing to do is to do the input and the outputs for this unit, and I'm going to mount a 100 amp box right here, and it will actually run out from here into the box, and it'll be just like a regular electrical panel in your house. I'll have to run the ground panel down, and I'll run the two wires in on the neutral and the hot wire to create a single phase with circuit breakers in our electrical box. Okay, so the next step will be to put this box in, and this is for like residential. Has a main shut-off switch. It's a 100 ampere. Easily could be used in the cabin, and this would be expandable as you expand units. And I'm going to start wiring up the panel, and for the output for the AC off the unit, I picked a 8 gauge wire because it's good up to 40 amps, okay, and generally. And I've already preformed it so it'll fit into where I want it to within this unit. So let's go ahead and put this on. Before we put this on, we're going to make sure that we use this right here. This is a OxyGuard. It keeps from oxidation, especially if you use aluminum wire. You want to use this. Otherwise, your aluminum will degrade over time and could cause fires. Isn't that wonderful? And I'm going to use a 1-inch connector at the top. This is a clamp type connector. So it just simply, you hit the knockout hole. There's knockout holes all over the box. You hit them from the side and they come out. So I'm going to hit this knockout hole, and you simply just put this washer in. Okay, you want to get it tight. Now the trick to this is there's little ribs right here. You put this little screwdriver, and on the top you put it a little bit sideways. So when you go to tighten this up, it tightens up the nut. Then what you end up with is it's nice and straight the way you want it. So you're a little tilted that way. Tighten it up with hand tight. Then use a screwdriver on one of the ribs and just knock it into place and tighten it. Okay, the next thing you want to do is put this little plastic ring on. protects the wires from getting cut from this connector. I just need to tighten it by hand. And there you go. Now you are ready to insert your wire into the unit. You just back off these screws. You can use a screwdriver, or you can whatever. And then stick your wire in there. So we'll get to that. I'll stick the wire in there, and then we'll go ahead and... Okay, so I got the wires in there, and I'm just going to tighten them up now. Since they're a little smaller than the legs, you want to make sure you line them up perfectly before you can slowly crank them down. Get them right where you want them. And they put the I put the ox guard on there. Make sure you use ox guard, especially if you're using aluminum. Now I want to say one thing. Let's talk about wire sizes and amperage for AC, voltage AC. A 12 is good for 20. 12 gauge wire is good for 20 amps, up to 20 amps. 30 amps for 10 gauge, and an 8 gauge is good for 40, and a 6 gauge is good for 55. So keep that in mind when you're doing this kind of stuff, the wiring requirements. And I'm going to show you a little chart later on how where that's at. I know I've done it in the other video, how the size wire and everything else, but you really need to pay attention to that, because if you don't, the wires could burn, and your house could burn down, or wherever you're putting this could burn down, and you'll be sorry out of luck. Now you're probably asking why I'm only doing this one side, because there's another side here too. Well, this is only going to be 120 coming out, so it's only going to supply this side, and that's why these are where these at. Now if I expand it later with 2 of these MPP solar units, I'll be wiring in a 240, and I'll put the other wire here and the other ground and neutral there, just for your information. And I want to make sure they're good and tight and snug. And don't worry if the wires extend beyond this lug. That's made it that way for a reason, so you can see that you actually got a good connection. Okay, those are good, those are good. Our next step is to go ahead and get this tightened up. Don't tighten this too tight that you can't, that you start crimping the wire itself on the insulation, because you can break through it, and that's not a good thing, because you can cause a short. Basic idea is for this to hold the wire. So it's holding the wire, and that's what I want right there. I want to make sure I pull on these. I can't pull these out. Same thing with the top up here. I want to make sure you can't pull these wires out. Make sure you have a good ground, and that the ground is underneath that washer, to make sure you got a good ground on that that wire on the ground. You want to make sure you have a good ground, so make sure everything's good there. So that's going to be the 120 coming into this panel box. And the reason why we put the neutral and the ground here, because we use this right here. This right here, you apply this if you're going to be using the ground and the neutral in the same bar. And you only do this on the main panel. If I put a sub panel on this, the ground will go to the box. It won't go to the if I put another panel on here, a sub panel, the ground goes to the box, not to the neutral bar. Just a little follow. Okay, so now I'm going to use a 12 gauge 3 wire and about 15 feet of it. The 10 gauge was just too much, and since I'm only going to input to the inverter 15 amps anyway, if I plug it into a generator, not 30 with the 240 plug, but a 120 at 15 amps. This will do just fine, because 12 gauge is for 20, 10 is for 30, 8 is for 40, 6 is for 55 amps. So just remember that. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and cut some lengths here, and then I'm going to show you how I'm going to install the outlets and wire the box and the panel. Okay, so I've got this little connector. It's a clamp connector, like the one we used up here. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a knockout. So all it takes is a small hammer, and you want to see where it's connected at. There'll be two ends that are connected, top, bottom. So you'll see that you'll be able to flip this. I'll show you. So just watch. See how I knocked that out? See how this right here got knocked out? So you just use a screwdriver and it's not advisable to use your fingers. A lot of people will use just a pair of needle nose pliers like this. Okay, and that comes right out, and you got your hole right here. We're going to apply two of these knockouts here, the 1/2 inch knockouts, and the screw just comes right off. And well, that was good. Okay, screw comes, the nut comes right off. With my big fingers, hopefully I can get it in here. Okay. Now to tighten this, we just take the screwdriver again, find that little edge right there. And you'll notice that this doesn't really line up straight. And the reason why I'm doing that is because when I tap this little edge, I want to tighten it up as much as I can get it. And then I'm going to go ahead and tighten this, get one of the edges of the nuts, and that'll straighten out and that'll tighten up. So I'm going to do that with the other one, and then we'll proceed with the rest of the wiring. Okay, so I've already stripped this one right here, and you can get yourself a decent little stripper. I'm going to strip the black one and the white one. And it'll have on here which one is 12 gauge for what gauge you're doing. You want to strip about a 1/2 inch off. There we go, that one came off a little hard. And that's acceptable length. You probably could go just a little bit more, but it's just going to go into this bus wire over here for the first circuit. And the first circuit is all I'm going to wire up tonight. I'm not going to do the second one, because even though this has two hot wire connections, I'm only going to use one, the black and the white one. The black is hot. The black one is hot. The white one is neutral. The red would be your second hot wire. And then if you go with the third hot wire, it would be blue. So you go black, red, blue. And then of course our ground wire is this right here. Okay, so now I've got the circuit breaker. And the way that this goes, let me explain this to you. You pull it from this end and it pulls out. And then when you put it back in, you snap it in between the two brackets and just push it on. So just like this, just like that, on, off. Okay, so what I'm going to do, the screw right here, I'm going to put the wire right in there between one of the two clamps to clamp it in. So very simply slide the wire in, make sure you have no insulation encapsulated on that, and then just screw this down till it's tight. Okay, and then we'll just go ahead and snap her in. And remember, this bus bar right here connects to that point, to that point, to that point, to that point. Just follow the metal. The other side is for the other 120, and when you have a 240 relay in your system, it'll grab both of these to make the 240. That's how this works. Okay, so just a hint. When you're actually slicing this Romex, this plastic sheeting, all you want to do is you just want to go ahead and slide it off to the end, how much you want to cut. And then you would have to cut in your wires in, and then you slide it back. So that's the one tip. So let's get started on this outlet here. I'm just going to slide this back in. It's about there. Then if I want to, I can clamp it down, because I really don't want all that insulation in there. And you can see I still have a whole bunch of air on the end. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull it about, it doesn't like come off as easy as it does to go back on. So I'm going to cut about that much off. In fact, I only need a little piece, really, about that length, because my box can be right next to it. And the rest of it I want bare wire. So pretty much run it all the way down to about right here. And I'm going to cut it. And you can easily do it with a pair of scissors. That's about right there. So, I got it all cut off. It's a tosser. Just slide this back over here. And get it in there. And voila. Well, I realized that I didn't get the right box, the right cover for the box for the outlet, so I've decided to change it up a little bit. You see this box right here. This is usually for mounting inside of a wall. It has the wings, so it'll clamp onto the paneling. But it also has these little things right here where you slide the wires in through. So we're going to use this instead. And really don't need a GFI, so we're just going to use a regular 20 amp one, because I've already got this to a circuit breaker anyways. So it's really not needed. So I'm going to go ahead and mount this box and run the wires through, and then we'll finish up wiring it. Okay, so I got the new box mounted, and I've got a little ground wire here, and that's the green one right here. And remember that neutral's on the same side, and on the 20 amp plug we have this little T on them instead of just a little one slash. And you want to tighten up the other ones that you're not going to use. So I'm going to tighten up the screws I'm not going to use. First thing we want to do is you want to attach your ground wire. And you want to kind of look at it and go, which way do I need to bend this with the universe? So if I want to mount it in there like that, I want to make sure that this thing is kind of bent like that. So it'll fit nicely right here on my screw. Now it takes a little playing with to get it in there. And then you get it in there and you got it around the screw. You just go ahead and tighten it. Nope, I'm not a lefty sometimes. But anyways, now that I've got it slightly attached, I can just bend it a little bit, get it into the position I need it, so I can finish tightening this. Ground wire. Tighten it good. Bad ground will give you bad results. Now remember, my neutral is my wet wire, so I'm going to fold it back a little bit. Let's get the. So what you want to do, you want to make sure that you had your neutral on your neutral side and your ground and your hot wire on your hot wire side. Okay, so now I've got the ground wire on. I'm just going to go ahead and on the neutral side, I cut it just short enough to fit within this little thing, little bar right here. And I don't want to leave any exposed wires out. Now you can do it the old-fashioned way where they used to do a hook and around the screw, or you can just insert them in and do it this way. This is personally easier, and some people like to hook it like we did the ground screw, so that some people like to hook it like they do the ground screw. So, but this is just easier to do it this way. And you got your connection, you just shove it in the other one. Make sure you don't clamp onto the insulation or you may not get a good circuit. So sorry it's a little hard to see. But it's kind of a tight area where I'm working on it. By the way, make sure you tighten these other screws down so they don't jiggle around and fall out or have some mishap or something gets in there and shorts it out. Okay, so our next step is we just go ahead and fold these wires back. Now they're going to be a little rigid because they're solid wires. We don't want to use braided wires for wiring outlets. Remember, AC, the voltage goes around the outside of the wire. In DC, the voltage goes in through the wire. So it may take a little work here to push this in, get it where we want it. But generally, you leave a run of wire behind your socket anyway, because what you really want to do is you want to be able to have a little extra wire in case you do a boo-boo, or you need a little extra wire because you need to move the outlet, or something else just to be done. Just common practice in the electrical world, people that do that. These electricians do that every day. If there's an electrician watching, he'll confirm exactly what I'm saying. Or she. Yeah, forget there's the electricians out there now. So it's going to take a little bit of work to get this thing clamped down. We're going to clamp down, and then I'm going to put this little case on here, just for extra protection. Go the way I want. Then we can test the circuit. And one thing you can do to get this put in there is just push down on each end, and then go ahead and screw it down so it'll be easier to mount the socket in there. So well, make sure you get it pretty tight. Okay, so now we're going to put the facing on. We'll get to that in just a minute. Okay, so I canalized another screw from another unit. We're just going to go ahead and screw the plate on. And now we're going to test this out. And I got a few gizmos to deal with first to make sure that we're not going to blow everything out. Now the GFI I will connect later to the input. Okay, one thing I found out is that this is actually double pole, double throw, which means it has to have both energized to work. Okay, so now I'm going to turn this on. I'm going to make the connection to the batteries. The unit will warm up, and as soon as it starts putting out 120 volts, 120 volts. So now we're going to test this. We're going to test this right here, and we want to see that this turned both orange here to test our circuit. So I've already got this on the on position. I'm going to turn on the circuit breaker, and it can confirm. Yes, we have two orange, the correct circuit, and it should make a difference. But we'll unplug this, and we'll plug this in. And the other one will work too. So now we know that this circuit's working correctly. So let's test the light, see how it turns on the light. I'm going to turn this off for a minute. Okay, so we have 120 volts, and I'm going to go ahead and turn the circuit on. And I'm going to test the light. We have power. So now I can go ahead and use this to run a refrigerator, a freezer, and I can get another unit and plug it in on that side. Then I can do 240 if I wanted to. So there are appliances that require 240, like a water heater, dryer. Most of your heating, like your HVAC and everything else, requires that. So there we go. And you're going to say, what about the other one? Well, it works too. See? So my next step is to wire in the input. Okay, so I just took the GFI where I put it where I want it for the input voltage, and I don't have a faceplate cover for it, but I don't really need it, but I'll get one later. Now we're at the point here where I put some more breakers in just to fill the holes for what's on this panel right here, the panel cover, so I could easily hang it and it would like that. And start your screws. And they're a little hard to get in, so they're not going to be easy. But all in all, this is a complete system now, except for one little face panel. And let's get one more screw on that. Okay, so I got the panel on now, so I can shut it. And it'll look like that. That locks. And I've just got to finish tightening these screws up, and then it's done. You can see that I have plenty of room next to the plug. And the solar input's already been tested. I already tested that a while back with the other batteries. Works just fine. Of course, I can have more of an array coming into this one. This is a 1, 2, or both on-off DC switch, and it's good for 12 to 48 volts. So just keep that in mind if you're going to use any of these. And I use that because if I have a real rainy day, I might hook another array to it just to give it more charging power. So there's our MPP solar. This is the input voltage. It's got a GFI on it for 20 amps. The voltage output going to the panel. Going to the panel, and this is our main breaker right here that we're going to use for this outlet over here for 120 up to 20 amps. Remember, the T sign means 20 amps on a 120 volt plug. If it doesn't have this little T in here, right there, it's a 15 ampere. And of course, I got a circuit breaker for the batteries in case anything goes wrong. This is a 100 amp circuit breaker, DC, and this are the input arrays for the solar, and this is for the battery system, which I mentioned before. The battery system is two 12 volt 100 amp hour LiFePO batteries, or lithium iron phosphates, LiFePO4. They're in series so that they make a 24 volt battery for the system that we're using now. And then that's so you go, there's your negative, there's positive, chain your negative, then there's your positive out of this 24 volt system. So your negative's there, your positive's there, you just chain two batteries together. This gives me 200 amp hours system, and this gives me 2400 watts of output, which essentially this unit will give me 20 amps of output at 2400 watts. That's enough to run a refrigerator, little ice chest, whatever you got. So this is my backup emergency system, and I probably will start using it for solar lights because I like it better. Okay, so completed the MPP solar all in one unit, and there's your controller. I've got the AC out going to this electrical box. It's got actual it's got an actual circuit breakers. This one's the only one active. The other three are just there for show. They're not wired up or nothing, but they are on the bus. And in this situation, this is actually double throw, double pole. So I had to actually take the 120 and put it on the other side to actually energize this to work. So just in case you need to know that, it doesn't work. So, and this is the input for the positive and minus for the input for the panels. And I have ability to have more solar panels to it if I want to on another array. This right here is a GFI switch. This is a 20 ampere. That's all I need for the input on this. It says my generator is only 15 amps at 120 volts on the outputs for it. So basically that's all it's going to get anyway. So 20 is more than enough. It'll break it if something goes wrong with the inverter on the generator. And this is the output right here. It's 120 volt output, and right now it currently is power in the greenhouse. This right here is a 12 to 48 volt DC fusible switch. It's 100 amps, and this can break my circuit if I want to and shut everything off. And it's on the ground side, positive side there. This is the batteries. This is for the array for the solar panels coming in. Follow it down. I have 4 100 amp hour light PO4 batteries, lithium iron phosphate, and there's 2 in series to make 24 volts because it's a 24 volt unit. So you connect the positive to the negative, and then there's your ground, and there's your hot wire or your voltage DC plus positive. And I have the same thing over here. This unit, these are in series to make 24 volts, and that's the output for that positive, and this is the negative output. And you can see I have these at this point, these cables, I have them paralleled. So yeah, when you parallel stuff, positive to positive, negative to negative. Now we'll discuss a little bit more about wire sizes and everything else as we go along, but you can see it's chugging along. And you can check a lot of stuff, see where it's at. That's 57 volts, 25.2 on the batteries. The other one was the line coming in. And it's currently using about 600 watts.